Welcome to Module 2. Now, before we start on getting to grips with self-harm and what it actually means, we're actually going to turn around and actually explain certain situations of how we come to be part of this actual course. Over the years, I've known hundreds and hundreds of self-harms. Believe me, I mean hundreds. And I'm telling you now, if anyone turns around and says to you, I'm cured of self-harm, I'm going to say to you that basically that person is actually experimenting. Any teenager will go around and experiment. They will see what the world is like, how it comes to be, what is actually out there, and how else they can actually work with it. The self-harmer, on the other hand, will continue this, and some do it for most of their life. I know an 82-year-old man who's been self-harming since he was 7. Yes, 82. And he's still self-harming today. Now, it's going to shock you and everything else, but this shows you the level of self-harm. Unfortunately, in his age, self-harm was deemed as a satanic sort of ritual to oneself. These people were then put away into mental institutions, even though self-harm is not a mental illness. Sad, but it's true. I know people who are in their 60s, 40s, 30s, 20s who continue to self-harm. So if someone says to you, and I mean this 100%, that they've been cured of self-harm, they were only experimenting. As we come down to the descaling methods, we shall also be going through Module 3 of where self-harm actually happens, and also the media interaction. Yeah, the media interaction. I believe media actually turns around and does not help the situation at all. So we're going to explore all these as we go through the course. And if you manage to get through to Module 2, congratulations. So, getting to grips with self-harm. I have a theory. I know it sounds silly, but that's just who I am. But before we actually get through to getting to grips, understanding what people do to self-harm and how to stop self-harm, then what we will do is we'll get to grips with self-harm first. There are 4 brain chemicals that influence brain functioning. A lot of you may not know this. They are serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, and norepinephrine. We won't go back and answer that again. Obviously, it's really just by the fact of what it does. And what they do is they each individually have a different way of affecting the mind. Serotonin helps with sleep, helps with love, food, also helps with fear. And this is where self-harm is. Self-harmers don't have any fear. So they have reduced serotonin levels. Dopamine helps you think, helps you smile, helps you avoid tricky situations. Self-harmers will not even do it. They will look for risks. They very seldom smile, and they very seldom think about the consequences that they're doing. Glutamate keeps you happy, helps you remember past experiences, helps you learn. Self-harmers, because they have as low serotonin level and the glutamate level between the two, they do not learn at your pace. They could have ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, and so on and so forth. Now, norepinephrine, I've said it now, gives you embarrassment, frightening, makes you wonder about other things. So, hopefully a picture of the first slide explains the processes and how these chemicals work within the brain. Let's try and stabilise this bit more. Each plays a part in stabilising how we transport information from one side of the brain to the other, therefore regulating emotions, and all those are emotions. indirectly, you did not know that. This confusion for self-harmers does not help them. It merely inhibits their ability to function like a normal human being. A normal human being will be able to rationalise. They will smile at someone says a joke. They will cry when they hear a bad experience. Self-harmers seldom do that. They actually go, who cares? I've shared this with you as I feel knowing this may actually stop judgmental practices for self-harmers. Before we start also, it must be noted that we will not stop self-harm. We said it in the first module, and we're going to keep on saying it all the way through. You will not stop self-harm. Self-harm will and can continue, as I've explained, all the way through life. But you may be able to reduce the episodes. There's how many episodes there are a year, how many episodes there are every 2 years, how many episodes there are once a traumatic situation happens. I know one person, she ended up not self-harming for 6 years and then went back to self-harming. Yes, she had 6 years free. Unfortunately, because of the stresses and strains of what she was going through at the time, she decided to go back and self-harm herself because she couldn't hack the stress. I sat there and I talked to her for 25 minutes. I said, how do you feel now that you've let all that steam off? And she went, why do you listen, Mum? I said, because that's what I do best. I listen. And this is what this module and all the other parts of this module will be. It will help you ascertain what is self-harm, how your self-harmer is self-harming themselves, how you can actually do anything to actually help them. The final part of this lecture, module itself will be on descaling levels. Descaling levels are methods that I have actually used with self-harmers to get them to talk to me. I'll say that again. I've used it. They're not cast in stone. Let's make this 100% clear. Not every self-harmer wants to be helped. You're not going to get to everyone. But with the descaling methods that I've used in the past, hopefully you may be able to ascertain and help a certain few. A certain few is better than none. Continuing. As you may have noticed from Module 1, there is no pictures of self-harm on the actual course. I think that is counterintuitive. It does not help the situation if you then actually see pictures of self-harm, pictures of someone harming themselves, and basically I will put them online. So we will not have any pictures whatsoever. You have enough images on social media. You have enough images in the news. You have enough images everywhere you go about self-harm. If you go onto Google, for instance, and put in self-harm, and you go to the images, you can have 1,000,001. I don't think that helps you understand self-harm. All that tells you is what actually people do to self-harm. I believe you will only find out how these people self-harm by approaching it in a completely different way. And that is listening to them. Not just listening to them once, not just listening to them twice, but making sure you listen to them. Don't take your eyes off them when they're talking. Don't, for any reason, write anything down without telling them. Don't. They need to know what you're doing. They need to know that they have your trust. Not 5%, not 20%, but 100% of the time. You will not be able to help a self-harmer if you do not put out 100% of yourself for them. That's every single one of you must understand this. Self-harm is not seen as a mental illness. I'd like to, well, I don't know, I'd like to turn around and say, I think you're all mad, but that would mean that they're mentally ill anyway. Which I think is true, they are mentally ill, these people. Because to not think it's not a mental illness, is ridiculous. It can actually end up leading to suicide, which we learned, if you remember, in lecture 1. I believe there's a chemical imbalance between these 4 chemicals. We won't go through the list again, because I can never say the last one. So I'll just leave that to you. I believe there is an chemical imbalance between the right cerebral cortex, the right half of your brain, or right hemisphere of your brain. For those non-academic, that is the right side of the brain, with that of its counterpart, the left cerebral cortex. Now, serotonin passes from the left to the right, and so on and so forth. I believe in between all of these main 4 chemicals all get mixed up in the brain. I'd like to be able to prove it one day, because I believe that, basically put, you will see that, certain parts of the brain light up. Neuroscience has come a long way. Some of the actual material used for this course is from the recent neuropsychological experiments and so on and so forth. Now, I believe with this chemical imbalance, it doesn't help self-harm. This chemical imbalance gives them confusion. When we come to the drugs that are used for self-harm in module 4, you will see that there are totally different drugs that can be used and everything else, prescription, herbal, and so on and so forth. But I would argue that some of these, even these, because of the compounds that bring them together, are very, very dangerous to your self-harm. But that's my opinion. Everyone is open to their own opinion. So this is how I see it. That basically, negative thoughts pass through from the left and the right, and they all get confused in the middle. Prefrontal cortex, where you take in all this information, cannot understand what's going on in the background. Your cerebellum, which actually postulates where all this is going and everything else, and where some of these actual chemicals come from, tends to turn around and say, oh, hang on, let's have a chemical overload. Now, with this chemical overload, you end up with people who basically cannot function 100% in society. That is what a self-harmer is. Now, if you remember, when I actually did the photo test in the first part of the actual whole course, now the photo test is designed for you to understand what it's like to be out there not knowing anything. I must say, if you did have problems with hay fever and things like that, then obviously I hope you did go online and downloaded an image to do this, to stay on this course, rather than put yourself in harm. I don't want anyone to harm themselves needlessly on my part. But anyway, as we go through the next so many lectures, you will find that there's certain things that you will learn on how to spot self-harm. By spotting the self-harm, you will not only be able to help your self-harmers, you will also be able to help yourself. You can remember, if you're a professional, this is professional practice, you will be teaching yourself how to help these people. Thanks for listening.